What began as a missing person case in Florida has spiraled into one of the most disturbing family crime investigations in recent memory. According to law enforcement officials, a woman reported missing was later discovered buried in a backyard, and the suspect investigators now point to is someone shockingly close, her own sister. The case has stunned neighbors, horrified the public, and raised chilling questions about what happened behind closed doors long before police ever arrived. Authorities say the victim, identified as Karen Pais, vanished under suspicious circumstances, triggering a search that quickly shifted from concern to alarm. As investigators followed inconsistencies, uncovered evidence, and re-examined family dynamics, the case took a dark turn, one that would ultimately lead them to a shallow grave steps away from where daily life appeared to continue as normal. Tonight, we break down the full case, the timeline leading up to Karen Pais's disappearance, the investigation that unraveled the truth, and the evidence prosecutors say points to a calculated and violent act. This is not just a crime story, it's a disturbing look at betrayal, secrecy, and the warning signs that may have gone unnoticed until it was too late. According to police reports and court filings, the investigation began when concerns were raised about the sudden disappearance of Karen Pais. Family members and acquaintances told authorities that communication had abruptly stopped, behavior that investigators later described as highly uncharacteristic. When initial attempts to locate her failed, law enforcement opened a missing person inquiry, treating the case with increasing urgency as days passed without credible sightings or contact. As investigators began interviewing those closest to Karen, attention turned inward, toward family dynamics and recent interactions. Investigators noted inconsistencies in statements provided by relatives, including Karen's sister, who was reportedly one of the last people known to have seen her alive. According to authorities, timelines failed to align, explanations shifted, and certain details raised red flags that prompted deeper scrutiny. Law enforcement officials say a key breakthrough came when evidence suggested Karen may never have left the property where she was last seen. Search efforts intensified, and investigators obtained warrants allowing them to examine areas previously considered unlikely. It was during this phase of the investigation that authorities made a grim discovery: human remains buried in a backyard, later identified as Karen Pais. Prosecutors allege that the discovery confirmed their worst suspicions, that Karen's death was not accidental, and that steps had been taken to conceal the crime. Investigators described the burial as deliberate, suggesting an attempt to hide the body and mislead authorities. At this stage, officials moved swiftly, securing the scene and transitioning the case from a missing person investigation to a homicide inquiry. As the details emerged, the case quickly drew statewide attention. The idea that a fatal act could occur within a family, followed by an alleged effort to erase all traces, sent shockwaves through the community. Authorities emphasize that the investigation remains ongoing, but what has already been uncovered paints a deeply unsettling picture. According to prosecutors, the case reached a turning point once forensic evidence began corroborating investigator suspicions. After the remains were recovered from the backyard, forensic teams worked to establish cause and time of death. While officials initially withheld specific details, authorities later confirmed that the findings were consistent with a homicide investigation rather than natural or accidental causes. This confirmation allowed detectives to formally pivot the case toward criminal prosecution. Law enforcement sources say that forensic analysis extended beyond the body itself. Investigators examined soil composition, tools recovered from the property, and trace evidence that suggested the burial site had been deliberately prepared. According to affidavits, the manner in which the remains were concealed indicated planning rather than panic, a factor prosecutors argue supports allegations of intent. This distinction, legal experts note, carries significant weight when determining charges. As evidence mounted, authorities moved to arrest Karen Pais's sister. Court records show she was taken into custody without incident and later appeared before a judge for an initial hearing. Prosecutors formally outlined charges tied to homicide and concealment, while emphasizing that the investigation remained active. The defense, meanwhile, urged the court to withhold judgment, stressing that allegations must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. During early court proceedings, prosecutors described what they allege was a pattern of deception following Karen's death. According to the state, steps were allegedly taken to mislead investigators, delay discovery, and maintain the appearance that Karen had simply disappeared. These actions, if proven, could factor into additional charges or sentencing considerations. As news of the arrest spread, public reaction intensified. The idea that a family member could allegedly commit such an act and then live above the burial site unsettled even seasoned investigators. For authorities, however, the focus remained on evidence, not emotion. With an arrest secured, the case now moved into a new phase, one that would test the strength of the prosecution's case in court. As the case moved through the court system, new details began emerging that further deepened public unease. During preliminary hearings, prosecutors outlined what they described as a chilling sequence of events following Karen's death. According to court filings, investigators believe the suspect continued daily routines while allegedly concealing the crime, a detail that has drawn intense scrutiny from both the public and behavioral experts. Prosecutors argue that this apparent normalcy was not accidental, but a calculated effort to avoid suspicion and maintain control over the narrative. Court proceedings also revealed the emotional toll the case has taken on extended family members. Relatives described a mixture of disbelief, grief, and betrayal as they grappled with the allegations. Victim advocates say cases involving intrafamilial violence often produce unique trauma, as survivors must reconcile love and loss with the reality of alleged criminal behavior. These dynamics, experts note, can complicate both healing and the pursuit of justice. Psychological analysts following the case have pointed to patterns often seen in domestic homicide investigations. While officials caution against speculation, experts say prolonged conflict, control issues, and unresolved resentment can sometimes escalate into violence when left unchecked. Prosecutors have not publicly detailed an alleged motive, but they suggest that the evidence paints a picture of deteriorating relationships and mounting pressure behind the scenes. Public reaction has been intense, with many questioning how warning signs may have been missed. Neighbors have spoken about how nothing appeared out of the ordinary, reinforcing how crimes of this nature can remain hidden in plain sight. Law enforcement officials emphasize that such cases serve as sobering reminders that appearances can be deceptive and that domestic violence does not always present obvious red flags. As the case advances towards further hearings, prosecutors say they are preparing to present a comprehensive narrative supported by forensic findings, digital records, and witness testimony. For the court, the challenge will be separating emotion from evidence and determining whether the state can meet its burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. As the case moves toward trial, prosecutors say the focus will now be on presenting a clear, evidence-driven account of what they allege happened to Karen Pais. Court filings indicate that the state intends to rely heavily on forensic findings, digital evidence, and witness testimony to establish a timeline that contradicts claims of innocence. Legal experts note that cases involving alleged concealment of a body often hinge on whether prosecutors can demonstrate intent, planning, and knowledge, elements that juries weigh carefully when determining guilt. The defense, meanwhile, is expected to challenge both the interpretation of evidence and the conclusions drawn by investigators. Attorneys have signaled that they will scrutinize forensic methods, question the reliability of timelines, and argue that circumstantial evidence does not equate to proof beyond a reasonable doubt. This adversarial process, experts emphasize, is a cornerstone of the justice system, ensuring that verdicts are reached through rigorous examination rather than assumption. For the community, the case has already left a lasting mark. Neighbors and local residents say the discovery shattered any sense of normalcy, forcing them to confront the reality that violence can occur even in familiar, seemingly safe environments. Victim advocates stress that beyond the legal proceedings, the focus should remain on honoring Karen Pais's life and acknowledging the profound loss suffered by those who knew her.
As the legal process unfolds, authorities caution against speculation and misinformation, reminding the public that outcomes are determined in courtrooms, not headlines. Still, the emotional weight of the case continues to resonate, fueled by the disturbing nature of the allegations and the intimacy of the alleged betrayal. Ultimately, this case stands as a stark reminder of how quickly trust can fracture and how devastating the consequences can be when conflict turns fatal. The truth, prosecutors say, will emerge through evidence, testimony, and due process, offering, at last, a measure of clarity in a story defined by secrecy and loss.